Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Ain Anisa and I'm going to introduce my other teammates. So this is Nabil Juhani,
Hi.
this is Nurul Fatini,
Hi.
and this is Putri Nur Batrisha.
Hi.
We are going to present about international economics. I'm going to start first. Firstly, what is international trade? International trade is an exchange includes imports and exports involving capitals, goods, and services conducted between at least two different countries. If you're wondering what are import and export refers to a good or service brought into the domestic country, while an export refers to a good or service sold to a foreign country. Among the items commonly traded are consumer goods and capital goods. So what are the examples of consumer goods and capital goods? So the examples for consumer goods are television sets, raw materials, food, and clothing. While for the examples for capital goods are machinery services, traveling services, and payments for foreign patents. International trade transactions are facilitated by international financial payments where the private banking system and the central banks of the trading nations play important roles. This economic transaction occurs for the purpose of providing a nation with commodities it lacks in exchange for those that it produces in abundance. For example, Malaysia cannot produce grapes, but can produce durians. While for Australia, they can produce grapes but cannot produce durians. Therefore, Malaysia will export durians to Australia and import grapes from Australia into Malaysia. This trade could help to improve the nation's standard of living. Next, let us look at who were the ones that create theories of the advantages of international trade, which are absolute and comparative advantages. The first model is Adam Smith model that created by Adam Smith in 1776. He said that trade takes place because of countries exercising absolute advantage over one another. The next model is Ricardian model that created by David Ricardo. He was the first to propose the law of comparative advantage. This model is based on the assumptions whereby labor is the only primary input to production and the relative ratios of labor where the production of one goods can be traded off for another differs between countries and governments. Other than that, the model of international trade is HO model, which also known as Heckscher-Ohlin model, that developed by Elie Heckscher and Bertil Ohlin. This theory predicts that countries will utilize their locally abundant raw materials to produce and export goods. In return, they will import goods which they cannot produce or require resources they lack in. The assumptions of this model are: first, labor and capital flow freely between sectors. Second, amount of labor and capital in two countries differ in endowment. The third one is technology is the same among countries in the long term. The fourth assumption for this model is tastes are the same. For your information, the absolute advantage and comparative advantage will be explained later in this video.
Hi, I am Nur Fatini and I will present about the advantages and disadvantages of international trade. The first advantage is enjoy variety of goods available for consumption. International trade give the country and the consumer the opportunity to be exposed to the different variety of goods and services, since it has brought different products from other destinations, and almost every kind of product may be found on the international trade. Thus, rather than purchasing and selecting local product, consumer may now have a wider array of choices for goods and services that meet their needs, leading to a higher standard of living and increased country growth. For example, Malaysia import many products from other countries such as China, Singapore, European Union, United States, Japan, and Thailand. Next is gain more profit and increase economic growth. International trade generates higher income and boosts the country's economic growth. When the demand for exports rises, the country will produce more goods, and as the demand continues to increase, it will stimulate economic growth. For instance, Malaysia, according to the Ministry of International Trade and Industry (MITI), reported that the international trade performance of Malaysia sustained a remarkable growth for the period of January to April 2021. According to the ministry, the demand for Malaysia products increased by 27.8%, which the total value is RM 387.18 billion. So we can see from the increased value compared to the last year, Malaysia gained more profit, and at the same time it increases the economic growth. Third is improve product quality and efficiency. International trade allows a country to increase the quality of its product and the efficiency of its production. When there is a worldwide trade, there will be external and internal competition, both of which will affect the local firm. As a result, to survive and continue to profit from international trade, businesses must increase the quality of their products so that it always comparable to those from other countries. In Malaysia, for example, Nike, Adidas, and Puma are examples of imported shoes that have a higher demand despite the higher price because of the quality that has attracted the customer. As a result, Malaysia production can use this brand as a model to improve their production. In addition, the business can also import more production machines through international trade, which will boost their quality and the production efficiency. According to the statistic published by the Art Hirschman, Malaysia has invested around RM 59.7 billion in the machinery, equipment and parts by 2020. Therefore, Malaysia can increase the quality and efficiency of their product using these advanced machines. However, international trade also has disadvantages that impact on the country. The first disadvantage is depletion in the country reserve. The continuous exports of raw materials from a country may eventually deplete a country reserve of the deposit in the long run. If this occurs, it will have a long-term adverse effect on the country's growth. For example, Malaysia is the world's largest exporter of palm oil, exporting 80 million tons of palm oil products in 2011, and Malaysia top export product by value in 2020. In sum, this major export accounted for 37.6% of overall export sales for Malaysia. The percentage indicate a relatively concentrated range of exported goods. Therefore, if Malaysia does not control its export, it will affect the country, resulting in shortage of raw materials and decreased economic growth. As a result, Malaysia must seek new resources to preserve its natural resources and raw materials to maintain a stable economy. Next is, if Malaysia allows trade with another country, demand for local product may decline due to the government's failure to protect local industry. This occurs when Malaysians choose foreign products over local ones because they offer better functionality. This can be seen in Malaysian automobile manufacturer, for example. Even though Malaysia produces various affordable and luxurious automobile manufacturers such as Proton, many Malaysians continue to purchase expensive international cars such as BMW. As a result, the Malaysia automobile industry will eventually fall as demand for local automobile decline. Last but not least, international trade has the potential to result in a negative balance of payment. A negative balance of payment situation occurs when a country's import exceeds its export. When a country imports more, there will be a loss of money because money flows out of the country at a faster rate than it enters. This occurred in Malaysia in 2020. According to the Department of Statistics in Malaysia, Malaysia exported only RM 92.6 billion in 2020 while spending RM 140.1 billion on export. From this, we can see there is a negative balance of payment. Malaysia's government has control over it because it will increase the country's national debt and affect the future, which is Malaysia has to repay inclusive of the taxes.
I'm Putri Norbatrisha and I'm going to present about protectionism. So, what is actually protectionism? Protectionism is government policies or restrictions that restrict international trade to help domestic industries. Basically, the sum of government trade policies intended to assist domestic producers against foreign producers in a particular industry by means of raising the price of foreign products, lowering costs for domestic producers, and limiting foreign producers' access to the domestic market. Now, let us take a look on arguments or reasons for protectionism. First, trade protectionism can reduce the deficit in the balance of payments. A severe deficit in the current account of the balance of payments occurs when imports are higher than exports. Trade protectionism is to use tools such as tariffs and quotas to restrict imports. When imports decrease, it will affect the control on the current account deficit that will manage the disequilibrium in the balance of payments. Next, protectionism will help the increase in government revenue. Some of the protectionism tools can increase revenue for the government, such as taxes and tariffs. Next, protectionism can help a country in order to diversify its economy, which is to prevent the country from depending on one sector only. With some restrictions, the local producers will have to diversify their goods for the domestic market by creating a wide range of goods rather than producing one product only. The last reason for protectionism is to create more job opportunities. When protectionism tools implied, the goods and services in market will decrease. So, local producers tend to produce more goods and services. Therefore, this will create more job opportunities in the economy as the production increases. Finally, we will go through the protectionism tools. First, we have tariffs. Tariff is the taxes or duties imposed on the imported goods. Tariff increases the price of imported goods in the domestic market, which consequently reduces the demand for them. Malaysia's tariffs are typically imposed on an ad valorem basis with a simple average applied tariff of 6.1% for industrial goods. Next is quota. Quota is a restriction or limitation on the volume of imported goods. Limited goods will result in the increase of price of the goods, which will reduce the demand for imported goods. The third protectionism tool is subsidies on export. It is given to local producers that produce goods and services for export to other countries. This will encourage exports to be more competitive. The next protectionism tool is exchange controls. Exchange controls occur when the government wants to restrict the supply of foreign currencies in the country. It is very effective in restricting the amount of imports into the country. Last but not least, we have embargo. Embargo is considered a direct control by the government of a country to prohibit certain goods and services entering the country. The government may ban some items from other countries based on ideologies. Malaysia has banned all goods and services produced by Israel because of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. As an example, Malaysia has banned all direct flights and overflights to and from Israel. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nabil and I will be explaining about Malaysia's balance of payments. Balance of payment is the national account of a country which measures all financial transactions and flow of currencies into and out of the economy within a particular period, usually a year. There are three main components in balance of payments, which is the current account, the capital account, and the financial account. I will be comparing Malaysia's balance of payments data for the first quarter of 2021 and the fourth quarter of 2020. According to the Department of Statistics Malaysia, Malaysia's current account continued to record a surplus of 12.3 billion ringgit in the first quarter of 2021 as against 18.6 billion ringgit in the previous quarter. The current account was supported by the goods account, which registered net exports of 36.6 billion ringgit as compared to 42.6 billion in the preceding quarter. Export of goods increased to 222.5 billion ringgit from 270.2 billion in the fourth quarter of 2020, with the main export were electrical and electronics, rubber and chemical-based products, principally to Singapore, China and USA. The import of goods surged by 14.3 billion to 188.9 billion as against the previous quarter, as a result from the increase of intermediate and capital goods, mainly from China, Singapore and Japan. The current account surplus was also supported by the lower deficit of primary income, as the primary income decreased to 5.7 billion from 7.2 billion in the previous quarter. This was mainly contributed by Malaysian companies abroad earning higher income of 70.3 billion, an increase of 19.1% from the last quarter. Most of the sectors were financial, mining and manufacturing, which mainly located in Singapore, Indonesia and USA. However, services lodged a higher deficit of 15 billion as compared to the previous quarter. The continuous implementation of Movement Control Order or MCO and closure of borders has led travel, constructions and other businesses services recorded higher deficits of 3.4 billion, 0.8 billion and 0.7 billion respectively. Export of services decreased by 1.9% to 20.3 billion as compared to the preceding quarter, while imports of services increased by 1.4% to 35.2 billion ringgit. Secondary income also recorded a higher deficit of 3.6 billion as against 2.7 billion ringgit in the previous quarter. Capital account data records a net outflow of 172 million as against 150 million in the fourth quarter of 2020. In the first quarter of 2021, the financial account turned around to register a net inflow of 16 billion ringgit from a net outflow of 10.2 billion in the preceding quarter. This was credited by higher inflow of other investments at 13.9 billion ringgit, mainly attributed by the interbank borrowing from abroad. Meanwhile, direct investment, portfolio investment and financial derivatives all recorded a net inflow of 1.4 billion, 0.5 billion and 0.3 billion ringgit respectively. That is all from us. Thank you for listening.